Hello, welcome to the week 2 session for AutoCAD Essential for Civil Engineers. So the topic for this session is sketching and editing 1. So hope you have worked with the session 1, that is the week 1, in which I think we have covered most of the concepts of how to start with AutoCAD and the graphical user interface of AutoCAD. We have also learned about various options to invoke commands, the tool palettes, workspaces, and the unit tools, how to set the units, how to draw a line using different coordinate system. So remember that we have learned about two types of coordinate system, that is the absolute coordinate system and the relative coordinate system. And in the relative coordinate system, we also have learned about the polar coordinate system and relative rectangular coordinate systems. Also, we have learned about different methods of how to draw circles, in fact. So we have covered almost a very basic start for AutoCAD in the session 1. And also, I'm sure that you have been able to do the challenges that have been given to you. So friends, sketching and editing. So let me talk about what sketching and editing means in a drafting. So when we draw something, like for example, draw a plan, an elevation, or sketch something, so we call it as sketching, like drawing a plan, elevation, or sections, or a layout. We call it as sketching. And then when we modify this, like for example, we want to make a line short, we want to erase something, we want to trim something, we want to extend a line, we want to mirror a line. So there are various tools in modification and editing in CAD that we will learn in this session. So editing tools are very, very important to learn along with the sketching tools to make you a pro CAD professional. So a professional has to understand about the various techniques to draw a plan, to draw a particular layout or a given sketch. So the speed is very important. So let's see what I'm going to cover in this session. So let me take down to the agenda. So in this session, after completion of this session, you will be able to create a rectangular geometry. So we will be learning about how to create rectangles with different kind of options, right? There are various options when you draw a rectangle, and the application of rectangle geometry in civil drafting, civil architecture drafting, how this application can be done. And next going to it, so we'll be learning about polygonal geometry. That means polygon means poly means many, gun means sides. So a geometry which is having more than 3 sides, 3 or more than 3 sides, is a polygonal geometry. So this is the sketching tool that we will learn. So in the previous session we have learned about line and circle. So here we will learn about rectangle and polygon. So apart from that, we will be learning the editing tools like moving an object, copying an object, how to rotate the object, right? Scale the drawing objects, chamfer and fillet drawing objects, use ortho and snap tools, and object snapping settings. So when we have the ortho and snap, these are tools which are very important while we are working. So chamfering means creating an edge to a corner. So that would be covered how the application of chamfering is done, and filleting is making a round in the corner. So these are very important important editing tools. So let us come to the jump start to today's session. The first object that we will learn today is a rectangle. So with the rectangle tool, what you can do with the rectangle tool, you can draw a square which are having all the 4 sides equal, or a rectangle with 2 sides equal sides. So rectangle is a basic geometry which is predominantly used for many of the application in a civil engineering or a drafting process. So it is a very common thing. So how do we do that? There are various ways of invoking the rectangle tool. So one of them is by ribbon. That is, from the ribbon you have the home tab and the draw panel, and then the rectangle tool is there. The toolbar, tool palettes, and on the command. So rectangle is the or REC command is the shortcut, or we call it as ls. So let's come to the AutoCAD screen. Let me open a file. So I'm in AutoCAD default. So I open up a default AutoCAD, new AutoCAD file with imperial setting right now, and I don't do any kind of modification like the units and other thing. So let's see how the rectangle tool is used. So here to draw a rectangle, so we come here. So you have this the menu bar at the top, the ribbon here, and the command over here. So to draw a rectangle, so in the ribbon you have the draw panel in the home tab. So there is a drop down over here. So click the drop down and the rectangle tool is there. Select the rectangle option from the drop down. So here you find a kind of help over here which says create a rectangular polyline from specified rectangle parameters, length, width, rotation, and type of corners or fillet, chamfer, or square. So there are various ways of creating it. So let's see how we create it. So we click on the rectangle tool. So now let's read what it is asking. The AutoCAD is asking for what? The AutoCAD is saying specify first corner point of a rectangle. Right? So let's come to the figure again. Now let's see how it is. So here when we draw a rectangle, so it has two opposite corners that you have to mention. There are different ways of drawing a rectangle. So when you say first corner point of a rectangle, so let's specify first point in the absolute coordinate system. So we say 1, 1. So friends, here we have different options that we can take, apart from if you're not specifying the first point, so you can go along with some options over here which is written here. So let's come up with the corner points. The first method is 2 corner points, the left one, the lower left corner, and the upper right corner. So the first corner point is 1, 1. Press enter. So if you look into it, the rectangle starts creating from that corner point. So you have to mention another corner point, that's the upper right corner point, or the upper left corner point, or the corner point can be at the down and this quadrant. So depending upon where you click. So I'm not going to click. So I'm going to create a rectangle of which is the width, let's say in the x-axis is 5 units, and in the y-axis the breadth is, or the length is, let's say 6 units. So let's do it. So for that, what we need to say, so this corner point that over here is at a distance of this from this point. So we'll be using a relative rectangular coordinate system here. We'll say at the rate 5 in x and 6 in y. So here at the rate y, because we are taking 5 in x from the point 1, 1. So we say at the rate 5, 6. So here we go. So when we write at the rate 5, 6, a rectangle will be created. That means you mentioned this point, that is the 1, 1, and then you mention this point from here. That we are using a relative rectangular coordinate system. So this point is at a distance of 5 units from this point, that is 1, 1 in x-axis, and 6 units from here. So let's select it and erase it. E. So we go to a rectangle tool again. So I say from the command I can go REC. I'm using the command prompt. So I say REC. It's asked for specify first corner of the point. Now let's take another point as 2, 2. Now here I want to, now you see that the rectangle starts from 2, 2. Now I say that I want to create a rectangle at this face, at this quadrant. So it is in the negative x and positive y. So again, I would say at the rate, let's say minus 5 in x and 7 in y. So what happens here? From this point, I'm creating a width of 5 units. I'm saying at the rate minus 5 in x and 7 in y. But the rectangle size is 5:7, 5 into 7. So it doesn't matter in which side you are creating, but it matters of what values you are giving in x and y. Now let's create another rectangle. Let's say at we take it at a distance of 5, 5 over here. Start point is 5, 5. So it starts from here. Now I say I want to create a rectangle. Say at the rate 10 units in x, that is the width is 10 units, and 5 units in y. So you have this rectangle. So with this value, first corner point and the opposite corner point. So in this method, you can basically create a rectangle using two corner points. The first corner point is this one, that's the lower left corner, and then the other corner point with respect to this. So I think you can create, let's create another one. Let's say we want to create a rectangle starting from 3, 3, let's say 7, 7 is the start point, first corner point, and length is 10 units and width is 3 units. So how do I do? So let's say I take REC as the rectangle command, and let's say 7, 7 is the first corner point, and here I say rectangular @ 10 in x-axis and 3 in y-axis. So I have created over here. So you can see that again, I go for an undo command. So I click undo. So I can take the first corner from anywhere. Let's say I take it from 10, 10. So it is here. So it starts from here, and I want to create @ let's say 10 in x-axis and 20 in y-axis. So the length is x-axis, the length is 10 units, and in the y it is 20 units. So let's erase that and quickly create 3 rectangles with this method again. So I say rectangle. So I now take it from the draw menu, rectangle. So I can take the rectangle from the draw menu. So I say rectangle from the draw. So here we are. And first point is, let's say 1, 1. So I start and then say @ I have a rectangle 10, 5. So here I go. So I have a rectangle 10, 5. So here, and from the same point, rectangle REC 1, 1, I have a rectangle, let's say 5, 3. So I will put @ over here, @ 5, 3. So there I have another rectangle with 5 units in x, that's the length, and width is 3 units. Similarly, I create a rectangle 1, 1, and again the other corner point. So I'm not taking the options over here. I'm just explaining you only one method right now, creating various sizes of rectangle. So I say @ the other corner point is, let's say 10, 20. So you have got different types of rectangle which is created from this point. So I think you have understood this method. Now let's go to the another method. So you can invoke the tool from rectangle over here. Now the method is, there's the settings over here. These are the settings, not a method. So let's say if you create a rectangle, now see there's a chamfer, there's an elevation, there's a fillet, there's a thickness, there's a width. So we'll be understanding all the commands over here, the settings over here, how it works. Now let's say first I create a rectangle here. So let's say I click on any point in the screen at this moment and say @ 10, 5. So here the settings are default. So I am not taking any settings over here. Now if I create another rectangle, now with a chamfer, let's say now with a chamfer of, now the first chamfer distance of the rectangle is, let's say 1 unit. Now what will happen now? See, the second chamfer distance is 2 units. Now the moment you create, now if you click on the rectangle, now if you see @ now you say @ 10, 20. Now you find that, what is happening. You say first chamfer distance is 1 unit and the second is 2 units. So how it is happening, let us take a dimension and see. It is only for reference, which is 1 and which is 2. So in the corner there is a 2 unit chamfer, distance 2 you had given, and distance 1 is 1. So what is happening is the first corner point you mentioned over here, so it goes in the anti-clockwise direction. So 1 unit over here and then 2 units here. Now you can see, so first chamfer distance and second chamfer distance works like this. So it goes first chamfer distance, second chamfer distance, then first chamfer distance. So this is the first chamfer distance and this is the second chamfer distance in the corner. So the first chamfer distance is 1 and the second chamfer distance is 2. First chamfer distance is again 1. So you can go it like this. You can see that first chamfer distance is 1 and 2. So let's understand it again. So let us keep the rectangle REC chamfer distance. The first chamfer distance is 5 and the second chamfer distance is 2. So I've made a bigger one. So I make an arbitrary rectangle and click it anyway. So now see, the first chamfer distance is 5. So this is the first chamfer distance, second chamfer distance is 2. first chamfer distance, second chamfer distance is 2. So it goes, you can basically imagine a rectangle with the corner point. The first chamfer distance is the y-axis, so this is, and second is this, and then it goes like this. So it creates a first chamfer here with 5 and 2 over here, and then 5 and then 2. So it goes in a counterclockwise direction here, like this. So now if you basically have a chamfer, now see, when you say REC, so here basically the chamfer is 5:2. So you can change it anytime, say click on the chamfer, so you can say 2 first and 2 second. So now if you create a rectangle, it will create a rectangle with chamfer 2 and 2. Again, if you are not clear with the first chamfer distance and the second, let us do it again. So rectangle, so first chamfer distance and second chamfer distance, so you have a chamfer. First chamfer distance is 1 and the second chamfer distance is 3. So if I create a rectangle, first corner point and the second corner point, now you can see that the first chamfer distance is 2 and the second chamfer distance is 3. So the vertical distance is 2 and the horizontal distance is 3. So from this point the chamfer cuts, and then first chamfer distance is 2 and second is 3. So it goes on consecutively, carries on like this. So hope you have understand this concept. So if you don't change the value, it will, you know what will happen if you say REC, and if you don't change the value, it will keep the default settings as the previous setting, right? So it is better that before jumping into any other setting, you should change it. So go to the rectangle, so go to chamfer and say 0 and 0, right? So now I have another option called fillet option. So what does fillet option do? So here it says that specify fillet radius. So you give a fillet radius of 5, and if you click on it, on create a rectangle, you see that. So I take a radius and see that the corners are filleted with 5 units of curve over here. So it is throughout. So again, so I say REC, or I can take the rectangle command from here and click it here and say fillet. So I say 3 units. So if I now create a rectangle by @5, 5 or 5, 10. So what will happen? Now you can see that rectangle fillet is not there because the fillet radius is too high. So what I do is I create a bigger rectangle. So click on it @30, 10. So now you can see the fillet radius is visible. So friends, filleting is something that if you take the fillet as the settings in rectangle, it will be there until and unless you change. So how do you change? Go to fillet option and put it as 0. So now you change the value. The next is basically the width. Width means the thickness of the line. That is basically which is created. So here we have the width is, line width is, let's say I keep it as, let's say 1 unit, or let's say 0.5. Now I create a rectangle. You can see a thick line which is created of the 0.5 units. So here you, until and unless you go for rectangle, you give a thickness, let's say. So not a thickness, I'm taking the width. Thickness is a different concept. So you take a width. So you take a bigger width too and click on a point, and you can create rectangle width, which is having a line width of whatever value is given there. So 1 or 2 units. So now if you don't change, now what is the width is 2 units. Now if you want to change the width, if you don't change it, it will remain the default value. So 3 units. So it will become more thick. That is, the width of the line will be more thicker. So let's select it and erase it. Now let's come to the next option called let's say thickness. So thickness is something that if you click on the thickness and give the thickness as 10 and create a rectangle, so you will find now over here the width is already, a value has been given. Now what happens? Now if you click on it, you cannot see. So if you click on the 3D figure in the view cube over here, click on this. Now you will find that the thickness is 10 units. So let's carry it again. So let me come to the point. So here I go and 2D wireframe and select it. So let us create, first of all, reduce the width to 0. So you'll understand it better. So here the what is happening, the thickness is, let's say I give it as 10. So I create a rectangle here. So I do a rectangle and create a rectangle here. So again, rectangle. So I gave a thickness value is 10. So I'm clicking a point at the rate, let's say 20, comma 20. So I created rectangle square, in fact, with a rectangle tool, and the thickness is 10. So what will happen if I create a 3D of it? So I find that this thickness is 10 units. So it is an entire polyline, not a 3D figure. It is a polyline. So thickness means the depth in the Z axis, right? So it is not visible from, so you can click on the 2D wireframe. It is not visible from the top. So if you want to change the thickness, now let's say I'm in a 3D, now I want to create rectangles with different thicknesses, REC. So I have a thickness, I create the thickness as 30 units. So click on the line and say at the rate 30, comma 30. So you have a cuboid over here. Now you can see that, you can have a rectangle with different thickness. Now you have a rectangle. Now here you cannot see thickness is, let's say 5 units. So you say at the rate, click on first corner point, at the rate, let's say 20, comma 20 in X and 30 in Y. So now you can find that again, this is a rectangle, 20 and 30, 20 width and 30 length, and height is, you can see that. So if you want to see the properties of this rectangle, select the rectangle, click right. In the properties, all the values will be given. So here there is a property of thickness. So you can change the thickness from here also. Let's say I want to change the thickness 5 units. So it will be changed. So I want to change the units to 20 units. It will be changed to 20 units. So here, one thing that I'm sure about, you have understood that the thickness is just a 3D representation to create depth in the rectangle. So that I can have a 3D representation of a rectangle. Now, coming back to it, now moving to the top view. Now let's come back to the another option in the rectangle. So we have the REC tool. So here the last option that we need to understand today is the elevation. There are various other way of creating rectangle. So now what the elevation tool? Now let's say if I am creating a rectangle at the rate 20, comma 30, right? So let's say I start the REC, I started from 1, comma 1 and say at the rate 20, comma 30. So here what I do is, I will create a rectangle of 20, comma 30 at 1, comma 1. Now same if I say REC, but I'm having an elevation of, let's say 5 units and start from 1, comma 1. And let's say same length, let's say 20 in X and 30 in Y. So another rectangle will be superimposed over the previous rectangle. But the only difference is, it is, if you look into it, the only difference is, now now what has happened that I have not changed the thickness. So what I do, go to the rectangle, change the thickness to 0. So now, so what will happen, the next whatever rectangle I do, or I can select all the rectangles, go to the properties that I have told about, and here the thickness you can make it at 0. Now what will happen if we make the thickness 0, you find that there are 2 rectangles that are created at the top of each other, and it is having a particular distance in the Z axis. So this is called the elevation. So let us create another rectangle. Go to the top view and say REC. First corner point is 1, comma 1, and then from here. Now let's keep the elevation, but don't forget that the elevation should be selected before doing the first point. So REC. So the elevation. So before taking the first corner point, change the elevation. Currently it is 5 units. So elevation, let's say keep it as 10. So the first corner point is 1, comma 1, and then you have 10, comma 20. So now this is a smaller rectangle, now, but it is at a height of let's say 30 units, 20 units. So you can check what is the elevation from the properties. You can see what is the elevation. So get it down. So here you have the value, the elevation. Here it is 10 units. This elevation is at, so if you select, put escape, and if you select this elevation is at 5 units and this is at 0. So with this, you can have, now you can, if you do a bit of orbiting, you can see that if you move the view cube a bit, you can see that how it is done. So if you change the elevation, if you select it, you can change the elevation from here, make it 3 units, that will come down in the Z axis. So select it and write a value of 3 units. You can see that it has come down. Again, go to the top view. So elevation means creating a rectangle at a particular height from the 0 in the Z axis. Okay, so I hope you have understood it, but if you have not understood it, I will do it again. Now let's take some example. So I have a rectangle which I create at the rate 30, 30. Now let's see, we will take create 4 rectangles at a height of, let's say, 5 units, 10 units, 15 units, and 20 units. Let's see how it happens, one above the other. The first elevation is, let's say, 0, and the first corner point is 1, 1. So every rectangle will create from 1, 1. So the rectangle is at the rate, let's say I keep it for the safer side, is 10, 10. Totally into the Z axis, 0 with the origin in the XY plane. Then we have a rectangle again. Now the elevation is, let's say, 5 units. It's 1, 1, and then at the rate 10, 10. So another rectangle is created. You will not feel it, but it is there. So elevation here, I take it as 10 units, and first corner point 1, 1, and say 10, 10. Another rectangle. So again rectangle, again 1, 1. Now change the elevation. Now it's very important, don't forget. So press escape, go for rectangle, go for elevation, change the elevation to 15 units, and you say first point is 1, 1, and at the rate 10, 10. So it happens to be there. So then rectangle, elevation 20, and here 1, 1 at the rate 10, 10. So what has happened? You have got 4 rectangles which is created one above the other at a interval of 5 units in the Z axis. So this is the use of elevation tool. So it is very useful in case of planar like survey data or planar, where you have different terrains of in a contour situation you have. So we will see how we can use this in survey and other in later of our lectures. Now the next option, so let's put the elevation as 0 before we proceed. So now there are other options. Now once you specify the first corner point, there is 3 options that you can do. First option that you did is to specify other corner point. But if you don't want to specify another corner point, now let's suppose you know the area of the rectangle, right? And you want to create the area rectangle with the specified area. Then what you do, let's say the area of the rectangle is 300 square unit, right? So the area of the rectangle. So I know that area of the rectangle is 300 square. So let's say A over here. So if I can click on the A, because it is in blue, now you can see whatever is in blue, you can type it over here or click on them. So I say A over here and press enter. So it says tell me what is the area of the rectangle. So I say, let's say I take a 300 as the square unit, current unit, 300 square unit as the area of the rectangle. Okay, then fine. Now once if I create a rectangle, AutoCAD says if I create a rectangle of 300 square unit, I need 1 dimension. Can you give me that 1 dimension? So now say if I want to calculate rectangle dimension based on length or width, which one you are giving me, length or the width? So I say okay, fine, I'll give you the length. I say length as 10 units. Now you will calculate what is the width based on the area. So length into width is the area. So here other dimension of the width will AutoCAD will calculate by dividing the area by the length. So if I say 10, so it will be 30 automatically. So if I say 10, so then what has happened? Now AutoCAD is showing you it has created a rectangle right now. length 10 and the width as 30 units automatically. Now let's do it again. So I have a rectangle, I click it here and I say area. Now I have gotten some absurd area. Let's say I have an area of 345 square meter, right? So now what I do is I say I want to select the width. I want to specify the width as, let's say, 10 meters. So now the length will be automatically calculated. So you can see that the width is the y-axis and the length is the x-axis. So here it says width is 10 meters. So automatically this would be 34.5. Let's measure it. So with the dimension tool, I'm sure that this would be somewhat around 34.5. So it is shown. So this is the area. So where do we use an area? Now let's say there is a case I have to create I have a land that is of the area of 500 square units and I know the width of it, that is the y-axis. So let's calculate the width. So let's take it an example. So the case study is 500 square unit width. 500 square, I have to create a rectangle of 500 square unit with width 10 units. So let us create it. So rectangle, I have to create the first corner point, right, is here. I take the area as the option and here I take the area as 500 square meter and here I say, so I'll take the length as, let's say, 45.5. So automatically it will calculate the width, right? So length is this x-axis, it will calculate the width and it will directly give me the area of the rectangle and based on what I had mentioned it over here. Okay, so now let me come back to the other option of creating a rectangle. So let me select it and erase it, go with the rectangle option and I go with the first corner point. So what are the other options that I have is the dimension. Now dimension means directly specifying the length and width. So click on the dimension and here the length is, let's say, is the x-axis width. The distance in the x-axis of the rectangle and distance in the y-axis in the is the width. So in the x-axis the length I want it as 50 units and in the y-axis the width I want is, that's the width I want is 20 units. So now I have a rectangle which is having a length of 50 units, that is the x-axis distance and the y-axis distance is the 20 units. But now I've given 2 dimension. Now which side I want to create, just I need to click on it. So it says specify at the corner point where you want to mention, right? So let's follow what AutoCAD is saying. So if I say rectangle, first corner point and the other corner point, I go with the dimension. Now the specified length for the rectangles that is written over here, rectangle length is 20 units, let's say, and the width is, let's say, 40 units. Now the moment you specify it, a virtual rectangle will be created, but it says specify other corner point where you want to put it. So drag your mouse to the point where you want to create the rectangle and click it, that will be created. So now the last options over here is the rotation option. So here we have, let's say, the rotation option. So here it says that you can create a rectangle with a rotation angle. So let's say I have a rotation angle of 45 degree. Now I can basically, from here I can take these options, area and dimension, and create a rectangle. That means you can use this option of creating rectangle if you want to create a rectangle at a particular angle or rotation. So hope you have understood this rectangle concept. So I can do it again. So rectangle, let it repeat it again. The first corner point is we have it over here. So you have to change the rotation. Now rotation is, let's say I want to put it 0. So now let's say now rotation I want to put it as it's a 30 degree. And now you can see that in 30 degree with the x-axis, a rectangle is now supposed to be created. And I can take an area or a dimension. So I can take a dimension of 30 units and width, length is 30 units and 20 units. So a rectangle at an angle of 30 degree. So now click on the side that you want to create. It will be created. So you can draw rectangle by specifying two opposite corner point as you have studied. You can draw rectangle by specifying the area and one side. You can draw rectangle by specifying the dimension. So you can rotate it. You can create a chamfer setting, fillet setting, width setting, thickness and elevation. So now next we will be doing a regular polygon. Okay.